Coming up on Backchecking the Bolts.
You don't see that hit too much in the NHL anymore.
No.
And when you saw it, the announcers, everybody reacted because of it. And I think that's just because the open ice hit, it's like the hip check. It has disappeared a little bit out of the game. And it was one of the few times where I've seen an open ice hit where a guy just really gets clocked.
Welcome to Backchecking the Bolts. Backchecking the Bolts is your cup of coffee to get you the latest on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Join host Jason Linkus and the managing editor of Raw Charge, Justin Godfrey, as they break down the Lightning's most recent games and go beyond the highlights, telling you what the box scores didn't. It's time to drop the puck.
We are back with the instant reaction to Game 4 of the Tampa-Montreal series. And if you are a Tampa fan, it's a very fun instant reaction because that was a 3-2 victory. Brandon Hagel, the man of the series so far, 2 more goals, got the game winner with about 6 minutes left in the game. Now it's time for me to bring in Justin Godfrey, the managing editor of Raw Charge. You can see him each and every day at www.rawcharge.com. Justin, this game had a little bit of everything. Huge hits, a couple different guys in the lineup, some controversy. Where do you want to start?
I had no controversies. A completely clean Tampa Bay Lightning victory.
There were 13 power plays, and I'm telling you right now, if you check social media, the Montreal fans are going nuts.
Well, you know, they are a passionate bunch, my friend. Like you said, this game just had a little bit about everything. I thought, honestly, coming off of what Cooper called Game 3 the worst game of the series for the Lightning, I thought the first period the Lightning played was probably one of their best, not only in this series, but it felt like one of their best periods since the Olympic break. They look like that team that put together a 21 game point streak, 19 game point streak, or whatever. They were moving the puck a lot better. They were skating a lot better. Thought they looked like there was a lot more room. Honestly, for them to be down 2-0, it felt like one of the first game of the series where the better team wasn't leading. Getzel gets that late goal, which huge boost. Then Hagel scores early in the third, and then ties, and then he gets the game winner. Yeah, just a really fun game to watch. I know Montreal fans probably don't enjoy the same feeling, but I really thought it was one of the better games for the Lightning, of recent memory.
This is as tight of a series as you will find. 4 one-goal games. 3 of them, of course, went to overtime, games 1, 2, and 3. Justin, as you'd mentioned, John Cooper hated their Game 3 performance. Heading into Game 4, there were some lineup changes. Sabrin was out. Oliver Bjorkstrand was back in the lineup. Declan Carlisle on defense, he sat. Meanwhile, Max Crozier, who made a lot of noise in this game, he was back in the lineup. Tell us about both of those guys and how you feel that they played.
Yeah, it was interesting. Not only, you're looking at those 2 changes, which we kind of talked about, after Game 3, if Coop would make the switch on forward. And he brought in Bjorkstrand, gives you a little bit more speed, a little bit more offensive skill. But not only did they do those lineup changes, they mixed the lines up too. You looked at the top line was Braden Point, Brandon Hagel, and Nikita Kucherov. So he broke up the Sorelli-Hagel duo that, has been the Lightning's best duo for much of the last few years. And then that second line was Guentzel, Sorelli, and Yanni Gourde. So, Gourde gets a little promotion there. And then the new third line with Bjorkstrand on it had Dominic James and Gage Gonçalves. And then that left that kind of grinded out fourth line of Nick Paul, Corey Perry, and Zemgus Girgensons, which is really the only line that kind of stayed together. But it's interesting that I like the combinations, honestly, to tell you the truth. I know we're so used to seeing Hagel and Sorelli play together that, they almost share the same brain. But I think the Lightning kind of needed a little bit of a spark, a little bit of a change. And we saw it tonight. That Hagel Point Kucherov line was flying out there. Just looking at a quick sum of the stats, they had the Lightning had a 16-3 shot advantage with that trio on the ice at 5-on-5. So they really, I kind of feel like for the first time in the series, the Lightning kind of dictated the pace this game was played at, as opposed to reacting to what Montreal has done for much of the series.
You had mentioned the Guentzel goal at the end of the second period. It really created a lot of momentum for the Lightning heading into the third. But I want to talk about the pass that from J.J. Mosier. That was a dynamite play. It was 4-on-4. The Lightning had just taken a penalty to basically make this a 4-on-4 hockey until the end of the period. But Mosier, on a little bit of a give and go, just threaded the needle and hit Gensel. Perfect pass. Gensel, of course, was able to roof it and beat Dobish, but what a pass by Mosier.
Yeah, it was, like I said, that's kind of the plays that you saw when the Lightning were rolling. These quick, decisive plays, they're not thinking about it. Gensel had a little bit more room to come in on the entry. He comes in, he skates around the net. They're able to keep the possession. And yeah, like you said, the little give and go, just give it to Moser and then bust towards the net on the far post. That's what Gensel did. The pass was right on. Dobish couldn't get over to make the save. If Montreal goes into the third period up 2-0, I think it's a different game. The Lightning are going to be pushing a lot more than they had to get that goal. I think, if Nikita Kucherov isn't on this team, Jake Gensel is your runaway MVP for this team, not only in the regular season. Hagel's getting all the press, but Gensel's had a really strong season or a strong series against Montreal as well. So for him to get that first goal, and then he hit the post. I mean, he had hit the post, I think, a little bit before that. So they almost tied it up at the end of the third, at the end of the second. There was that little full mouth scrum. Yeah.
Huge scrum in front of the net. Actually, point shot hit the defenseman, and if it doesn't hit the defenseman, who I think was sort of unaware that the shot was coming towards him, that's 2-2 with about 6 seconds left in the second.
Yeah, Crozier's right there. He would have put that right in. Yeah, it kind of got deflected up a little bit and then rattled around. And to give Dobish credit, he made a really nice. He kind of got his stick on it because Gensel was crashing the net, and it would have been an interesting call if the puck had gone in because Gensel kind of dove headfirst into Dobish, so it would have been the old goaltender interference review would have been hilarious at that point. I think they built off of that. They came out strong. They got the power play early on, and Hagel just wins the battle. When you watch these things on replay sometimes, and you know what's coming, you watch what's going on before the goal. And Hagel was battling the entire power play. It was a really nice play, and he gets that inside position. Kucherov puts it right on his stick and he deflects it home.
Justin, before we talk about a couple hits that happened in this game, I want to go back to the first period. Andrei Vasilevsky had to really face a barrage early in that first period when Montreal was pressing on the power play as well. Vasilevsky really was awesome tonight.
Yeah, it was kind of funny before the game. I heard, I don't know who was talking about it, some little national media. They were talking about Vasilevsky not having a good series. And if you look at his raw numbers, yeah, but I think he has been absolutely fantastic in the series. A lot of those, he's got a 882 save percentage, but how many of those goals have come, on the power play or on the penalty kill, I should say. I think at 5-on-5, he's been absolutely outstanding. And the first period was just another example of it. Montreal came out. I thought Tampa had a good start. Montreal kind of came on. They had an early power play, and Vasilevsky was just absolutely on point. He made a great save. I believe it was on Demidov. It's a rebound. The shot comes in from the slot. It hits Vasilevsky's pad, kicks over to it was either Slafkovský or Demidov. I can't remember who it was. But he's right there to put that rebound in, and Vasi just pushes over, makes the save look easy. So yeah, he had 3 or 4 of those kind of quietly spectacular saves in the first to keep the Lightning into it. And then once the Lightning got their feet under them, I really thought they played really well. I thought it was, like I said, one of their best games. And I honestly thought it was one of Montreal's kind of, I don't want to say worst games, but I don't think Montreal played well for long stretches of that game. They had trouble getting the puck out of the zone. They actually had some trouble dealing with Tampa's speed, which isn't something we've seen so far in this series. So yeah, just Vasi did what he had to do. Hagel just continues to be a one-man wrecking crew, and so it's just fun. That's all I can say, man. This is just a fun game.
It's been a fun series, and I think some of the people talking negatively about Vasilevsky they're not giving Montreal enough credit. This is a really talented team.
Yeah.
And I think whoever is going to get out of this series is going to give Buffalo, I'm assuming it's Buffalo now that they have the 3-1 lead over Boston. They're going to give Buffalo everything they can handle. And my guess is the betting odds are probably going to favor either Tampa or Montreal, barring an injury. to one of those teams heading into the second round. But Justin, there's a lot to dissect with this game. Two huge hits that caused both benches to get into a little bit of an uproar. The first one was Corey Perry. Corey Perry went into the corner, took a stick to the face, came off bleeding. You saw Cooper wanted a penalty. I actually thought it was a good non-call because Corey Perry was pretty much at the defenseman's quad. I know you have to be responsible for your stick, but at some point, if it's below your waist, which is in the NHL rulebook, it's a little bit incumbent upon the player too.
Yeah. I had absolutely no problem with no call there, which is kind of amazing considering there's been 8,722 high sticks already called in the first 4 games. So the one that actually draws blood, doesn't get called. But I had no problem with that. It wasn't a penalty. It's just one of those things that happens in hockey. So a little bit of a scrum after it, just because, anytime a guy like Perry, who is a leader on this team, he doesn't wear a letter, but he is one of the Lightning's leaders. It's the reason they brought him back here. If you see him bleeding, you're going to, take some umbrage to it. So that's what the Lightning have done all series. It's what they've done all season. So yeah, they kind of, got into it a little bit. I think it was Nick Paul and Arbor Jackage were kind of laughing at each other. God bless Nick Paul if he wants to drop the gloves against that guy, but nothing actually came out of it. I think they just ended up with matching minors or something like that.
I think Jackage actually dropped his gloves and Paul wouldn't reciprocate.
Which, trust me, like if I'm Nick Paul, I'm not dropping my gloves with that man either. I mean, you're talking about probably, it's either him or Oliver, and Columbus is your top 2 heavyweights in the league. So, Yanni Gord's been yapping at Yakage all series long. And like, if that ever actually turns into a fight, God rest Yanni Gord's soul, because he'll get pummeled into the netherworld. So,
Justin, the second hit I wanted to talk was Max Crozier leveling Slafkovský at center. Slafkovský went off the ice, didn't appear again until the third period. Now, the hit happened late in the second period, so he probably missed a shift at the most. But a big hit. The Montreal bench was not happy. It's the playoffs. No one's going to be happy to see a guy get leveled, especially a top-line player like Slafkovský. But I thought that was a good hit. He did not leave his feet until he actually made contact, and that's physics.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those hits, Slafkovský is skating through the center of the ice with his head down. You're going to take a hit like that. Everyone's going to slow angles down. They're going to freeze frame stuff on social media to make it look like the initial point of contact was the head. He put it right into his chest. Does the shoulder ride up a little bit? Yeah, but that's, like you said, it's physics. It's going to happen. If I was a Lightning fan and somebody did that to say Hagel, would I be really upset? If I was on the bench, would I be screaming? Yeah, but in the end, it was a solid hit. Crozier's kind of a sneaky big hitter, and that's part of the reason he's in the game. And I thought he played pretty well for a guy who hasn't really played much for the last 2.5 months. So,
Justin, you don't see that hit too much in the NHL anymore.
No.
And when you saw it, the announcers, everybody reacted because of it. And I think that's just because the open ice hit, it's like the hip check. It has disappeared a little bit out of the game. And it was one of the few times where I've seen an open ice hit where a guy just really gets clocked and it's clean.
Yeah. And actually, the fact that there wasn't really a scrum after it was kind of impressive. I mean, there ended up being a whistle just because I think there was a slashing call at the end of it. I think Crozier got slashed late in the play, but I mean, both teams were kind of let that kind of go. And of course they got together after the whistle and they probably said some mean things to each other or tried to hurt some people's feelings. But in the end, usually if you do see a hit like that, even if it's legal, the gloves are flying off and somebody's trying to fight somebody else. So, I do give Montreal credit for that. Now, of course, the negative thing, some people are going to be like, well, they didn't stand up for one of their best players. Crozier should have been buried into the boards. There's always going to be that faction of fans that talk about hits like that. I think it was a good, clean hit. Is it a series-changing hit? I mean, the Tampa radio crew was kind of talking about that. It's one of those hits that you can kind of point back. Do the Lightning pull from it? You're not going to know that until the series is over. If the Lightning lose game 5, then it's not really that much of a defining hit. But if they go on and let's say they win the next 2, then, all of a sudden that becomes a much bigger hit in retrospect.
I did think they gained some momentum from the hit. I thought their play was much better from that point on in the hockey game. I thought that when that play happened, I thought it woke them up a little bit.
Yeah. I would say it was probably a game-changing hit. I have no problem saying that. Hagel has mentioned this in the past. This team plays better with a little bit of emotion behind them. I think they've tried for such a long time to be this even-keeled, don't get too high when you're good, don't get too low when you're bad kind of team, that they kind of suck some of the emotion out of the way they play. And that's kind of been missing the last couple of years. This year, we've seen a lot more of it. This is a team that right now doesn't really have a designated fighter, but if you mess with anybody, they're going to come back at you. We've seen Jake Gensel drop the gloves, Hagel's drop the gloves. Pretty much everybody on this team has a fight, I think, except for Braden Point or Kucherov. But it is a gang mentality for this team. And when they get fired up, and sometimes that's a problem. I think sometimes if they don't get a hit like this, or they don't get a big play, they have trouble hitting that emotion, and it affects their game. So, yeah, I mean, so rile them up at your own risk. I think there's a lot of confidence in their game right now. I think this is something they could build on. I do think it's a little unfortunate that now we have 2 days off before they play again, which kind of happened with the game 2 win. They had that big overtime game, and then it's the extra day off, and you can kind of get, Montreal's not feeling as bad about themselves with that extra day of rest. But it'll be a pretty interesting atmosphere for Game 5 in Tampa on Wednesday.
Justin, I want to talk about the big guns for Montreal, and I have the stats right here in the series. Nick Suzuki, no goals, 4 assists. He's a -4. Cole Caulfield, he had the power play goal today, 3 assists as well. He's a -5. Slafkovský had the hat trick in game 1, hasn't had a point since. He's a -4. If you were to tell a Montreal fan your top line is going to be combined -13 through 4 games, I'm willing to bet most of them would think that they're down 3-1 or swept in the series.
Yeah, just with the way they relied on him through much of the season, and like even the season series against the Lightning. I mean, we had talked about this for the preview. That trio had absolutely lit the Lightning up, especially over the last 2 games that they met in the regular season. All credit to the Lightning defense. I did think that in the third game, game 3, I thought that line played really, really well. The Suzuki line, they just didn't, get the puck to go into the net. But I thought they were kind of a little bit more back to their style of play, where they were generating a lot of chances down low. And even tonight, they had a couple early on, but I think the entire Montreal offense kind of fell apart, even with the 2 goals that they scored, fairly quickly with each other. They weren't generating a ton of chances overall throughout the entire game. I thought the Lightning defense was really solid. They pushed a lot to the perimeter, and especially like at the end of the game, Montreal had a 6-on-4 for roughly 90 seconds or so, and I think they got 1 shot on net, and it was kind of a weak shot through traffic that Vasilevsky saw. The Lightning blocked 4 or 5 shots. They held their structure fantastic, I think, on the 6-on-4 at the end, and just didn't give him any of those cross-ice passes that Montreal loves. You saw Demidov with his stick in the air for almost, the entire 2-minute power play, waiting for that pass that he could one time, and they just couldn't get the puck over to him quick enough to make that an effective play. So that's on the Lightning penalty killers. It's on their defensive structure, which has been a lot better as this series has gone on.
I actually thought both teams, their penalty kill was extremely good tonight. Montreal had to kill an extended 5-on-3 disadvantage midway through the third period, and they did not give Tampa much to operate. You have to give credit to the Montreal penalty killers there, because it looked like the Lightning had a prime chance to not just take control of the game. Now, of course, Tampa ended up with the Hagel goal to win it. But I want to talk about that power play. What did the Lightning do wrong on that 5-on-3? Because I thought they were just standing still.
A little bit too little movement, I think. They're trying to be a little too precise, which kind of interesting enough. I thought they had done better earlier in the game on their power plays as far as moving the puck around. Thought their first couple power plays were pretty good. They were a lot crisper with their passing. They were generating some chances. I thought Dobish made a couple really good saves. We talked about Vasilevsky in the first period. I think Dobish was kind of the same for Montreal, especially when they were shorthanded. He made a couple of really nice saves. But yeah, on the 5-on-3, I think the Lightning were just trying to be almost a little too patient. Like they're like, we don't want to rush this. We have this great advantage. We want to make sure we get the great shot. And they're a little too passive. Montreal, they broke up a couple of the passing plays and were able to clear the puck. So that was big on them because they were able to shoot the puck down 2 or 3 times, which, kills 15, 20 seconds right there. But yeah, I thought the one thing I liked about the power play where the Lightning scored on it, the first Hagel goal, is you saw a little bit of a change in the lineup. Getzel was out high with Kucherov dropping down onto the goal line. And if you watch that play a few times, you're like, how did they get space to make that pass, right? Why did Montreal let them make that pass across the crease right to Hagel? Well, right before it, Kucherov has the puck as usual. He's feeded back and forth with Hagel or with Getzel at the point. And there's one sequence where Kucherov has it. He tries the backdoor pass. I think Radish was cutting in on the far left circle. The pass gets through. The shot doesn't get off. Second, right after that, they get the puck back. Kucherov shoots the puck from the goal line. It's not a great shot. It's not a hard shot, but it's a shot. Now, all of a sudden, Dobish has to respect him shooting from that spot. They play catch a little bit, and it kind of draws the Montreal defender out just enough that when the pass comes back down to Kucherov, that lane is finally open. He fires it. Hagel's got the inside position, and it's a tap in a goal. That's something that Montreal hasn't been giving up a lot of on, when they've shorthanded. They've stayed in their structure. They've stayed in that box and not allowed that pass to the middle of the ice. And I think Kucherov just he toyed with him a little bit and kind of baited him into spreading out a little bit to open up that lane. So it's the little things that he does like that are so good. Like him, McKinnon, Crosby does stuff like that. That's what those upper echelon playmakers can do, is you give them the same situation. They have 3 different plays that they can make, and you don't know which one's coming, and they take the best one and turn it into a goal.
Montreal's power play goal was very similar. Cole Caulfield was able to slip behind Lilleberg and basically had the tap in past Vasilevsky. It was interesting. Of all the power plays, the 2 power play tallies in the game were almost identical in how the plays were drawn up.
Yeah, I really like how Montreal set that up, because a lot of it has to do with Suzuki just maintaining possession of the puck along the boards. Caulfield's sitting down below the goal line, and he just kind of waits for the opportunity. He can read the play. He can see that the pass is coming and just darts out in front. So it's not like Hagel is like battling for 30 seconds with a defender, jousting and, trying to push off. Caulfield just waits for his opportunity, sneaks out there, puts his stick on the ice right in perfect position, and Suzuki just hits it with the pass. I mean, that was a well drawn out play, and it plays to their strengths because, Caulfield's not a huge dude. So he's not going to be able to win a lot of the, if you're pressing on him in front, if Lilleberg's slamming on him or McDonough's like jousting with him, he's not going to win a lot of those battles. So keep him kind of out of the play a little bit and then just kind of sneak him in when the opportunity presents itself. And, Suzuki just made a great play with the puck. So I love watching good power plays work their magic, and the fact that people can score in different ways, that's part of the fun of this game.
Justin, one of your keys to this game, and we had put it out there on social media on a couple reels, was getting traffic in front of the net. Grade the Lightning tonight on getting traffic in front of the net.
It's by far their best game in terms of taking away Dobish's eyes, just getting players in front of them. It's kind of funny that none of these goals were really, rebound goals that we were kind of looking for. They're all kind of clean plays, tap-ins. The third Hagel goal is hilarious because basically Kucherov just whips an 85-mile-an-hour pass off his chest and into the goal. It's you go stand in front of it's the old Lemieux. You go stand in front of the net, I'm going to bounce 20 goals off of you. They were credited with, I believe, 20 high danger chances by natural stat trick. I haven't done the math yet, but I don't think they had 20 high danger chances in a series, to tell you the truth. So especially early on, the first half of the game, they were really getting in there. They were getting some good looks at Dobish. They were making him work a lot more. And I think even if you don't score on those opportunities, you're wearing the goaltender out. He's diving all over the place. He's not a technically proficient goaltender. He's not Vasilevsky when it comes in terms to efficient movement. He's kind of more of that Dominic Hasek. I'm just going to, do whatever I need to do, flop around on the ice, swim across the crease to do whatever I need to do to keep the puck out of the net. And the fact that he's like 6'5" or 6 or whatever he is, kind of helps out with that. But if you get him moving around, that tires him out later in the game. So maybe he's not on point for a shot that's coming in. And I just think the Lightning just did a much better job of possessing the puck in front of the net, getting to the front of the net, and then eventually getting it into the net, which is the most important thing.
This series is at least going to go 6 games. One stat that I saw tonight, Montreal had 50 hits compared to Tampa's 28. Those hits over the course of a 6-7 game series can start to wear on you. Any concern in your eyes that Montreal is a boxer out there, and you've covered boxing. You
Yep.
keep throwing punches and eventually your opponent tires late in the fight. Any concern about the Lightning there?
I don't think so. Both teams are throwing their fair amount of hits. Another thing is, like, if you're leading in hits, one thing that tells you is that you don't have the puck and you're chasing. So yes, you're playing physical, but you're also expending a lot of energy to hit somebody. So I'm not overly worried. Plus, I don't think there's been a bunch of bone-jarring, heavy hits. There was a couple scary moments for Lightning fans. The Jake Evans hit on Kucherov that kind of sent him into the boards awkwardly. You kind of worry about stuff like that. Like, yeah, Kucherov came back in the game, but he was flexing that hip pretty aggressively right after the hip. So is that something he's going to be dealing with, as the series goes on, as the playoffs go on? But I'm not overly concerned about the hits just because there haven't been a lot like that. Now, if it was one of those where they were coming in just absolutely leaning on the forwards, I'd be more concerned. But I think a lot of those hits are on their forecheck, so they're hitting bigger guys. So they're running into Littleberg, they're running into McDonough, which those guys have been taking that. They can take those kind of hits. So I don't think so. And bring back the boxing analogy. I think the Lightning are playing with a little bit more confidence. I think they feel like they've taken the best that Montreal can throw at them, and they're still in this series. So I think, you're a boxer, you take a guy's best shot and it doesn't hurt you, you're going to be a little more willing to throw hands, to play, maybe drop your guard a little bit more in terms of trying to get more offense. And I think you may see that from the Lightning moving forward. I think they feel like they can roll with the Canadians. They can shut them down when they need to. So they can be a little bit more aggressive with the puck. And I think, you saw a little bit of that today with just the speed they were attacking with. They were driving to the net a lot more than they had been in the past. So it's going to be interesting to see how what I'm assuming are going to be the next 3 games play out.
Justin, you got game 5 coming up. Any thoughts going into game 5?
Keep rolling with it. Just kind of keep doing what you did today. Play that north to south game, get the puck in, use your speed through the neutral zone. And that's, something that I kind of like out of that, that Dominic James, Gonçalves, and Bjorkstrand line is those guys can wheel with the puck. They can get it from the blue line to the other blue line and into the zone really quickly without having to pass it or dump it in. If they could do that, the same thing with Braden Point, who's looking like he's skating a little bit better now. They got the guys that can carry these pucks through the neutral zone. Keep doing that. Get those shots on net. Keep putting the pressure on Dobish. And, Montreal's a young team. I think they've played really well. I think their poise has been really good. Some people may say, oh, they choked this game away, but it's just 2 good teams going at each other. And I thought, they had some good responses after the Lightning scored. They just didn't get the goals, that they've been getting lately. So this is far from over. I don't think the Lightning are going to win the next 2 and then, move on. I think this is going 7. So buckle in, boys. It's going to be a fun one.
Any chance St. Louis splits up his top line?
You got to wonder at some point, maybe you move, Slafkovský on a line with Demidov, but yeah, you got to kind of wonder at what point does that start bothering him. I listened to his press conference the other day. He's not super concerned because he felt like they were still getting the chances, which, like I said, in game 3, they were getting their chances. But I think at some point, you kind of have to start thinking about it, even if it's not for the entire game. Maybe it's a shift or 2 here or there. Wake them up. I think seeing Slafkovský, maybe with Tessier and Demidov, get that line going. That's that could be a potentially dangerous line for against the Lightning. So we'll see. It's adjustments. That's what these series are all about when you're playing the same team. 6 or 7 times in a row.
Justin, final question. What's going on over at Raw Charge?
Oh, let's see. We'll be talking about the Lightning, kind of some more points. We had the recap go up just before we started recording. So then we'll dive down to some deeper points, some deeper thoughts, expand on those tomorrow. We'll talk about the Syracuse Crunch picking up their first playoff win today, as well as they beat Cleveland 4-1 to even that series at a game apiece. Kind of delve in to the old AHL level and see how they're doing. So yeah, we got that. We got that extra day to write some more stuff, and we're gonna enjoy it.
Well, we will be back after game 5 to give you that instant reaction. Right now, the series is tied at 2. It's going to be a doozy. For Justin Godfrey, who you could read each and every day at www.rawcharge.com, I am Jason Linkus. Thank you very much for joining us today. Please hit that like and subscribe button. We appreciate everyone out there. And hey, go Bolts.
Go Bolts.
Thank you for listening to Backchecking the Bolts. We are free and available on all platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, YouTube, and Deezer. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review. You can follow Justin on Blue Sky at rawcharge.com. You can follow the show on X at Tampa_Bolts_pod and on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Backchecking the Bolts. If you're interested in advertising on the show or partnering with us, you can find more information in the show notes or email Jason at backcheckingthebolts@yahoo.com.